We are here today with Odie Carpenter Jr., the Democratic candidate for county sheriff. We appreciate you meeting with us and would invite you to start with an opening statement about why you're the best candidate for the job.
I thank you for having me here. And why am I the best candidate for the job? I have over 40 years law enforcement experience throughout the state of Illinois. Started my career as a police officer and detective in the East St. Louis area. Did investigations involving all of the crimes that occur in that area as far as felonies. Relocated my family to Springfield in '85 to pursue another career where I went to the Department of Corrections as an apprehension specialist. In the apprehension unit, you're charged with dealing with everybody that's been a felon, and you have to bring them back into the system. Some of them are escapees. Some of them are just parole violators that refuse to come in when they're scheduled to come in to the parole office to do their reporting. After corrections, I went to the Illinois Department of Illinois Commerce Commission Police, where I started off as their training officer, trained all of them in the commercial transportation law and some of the updated laws throughout the state. Was promoted to sergeant and later to commander, deputy chief, and I wound up my last 7 years as chief of police for the Illinois Commerce Commission. And retired from there. It's been about 7 years ago now.
Okay, thank you.
So before we dive into some of the detail, what is it that makes you a Democrat? How'd you come to be a Democrat?
My parents have been Democrats. Had been Democrats all their life. They're passed on now, but we grew up in a household of Democrats. My parents, uncles, most of all my relatives.
And how would being a Democrat, how would that be reflected in your work as sheriff?
I don't know that it would be reflected so much in my work as sheriff, because I'm a person that choose to go for the most qualified candidate. And I don't think the party has anything to do with your work ethics and your duties.
Okay.
So if you were elected to this office, what would be your top priority and how would you champion it?
My top priority is always the safety of the citizens of Sangamon County. I would like to hope that the persons in charge of seeing that we have funding will understand that you cannot run a sheriff department with a minimal budget when there's certain needs for good vehicles, officers that may have to work overtime. It's just a large group of things that's required to run a sufficient police department.
Do you think that's lacking now, that there's not enough funding for the department?
I'm not totally aware of the present funding with the department, but it will be looked into, and hopefully we come to some kind of agreement to help not only the people here in Sangamon County understand that there is a need for the safety of all of Sangamon County, and when you're trying to supply those needs, to make sure that everybody's secure, make sure that you have equipment that's functioning, and the officers' safety and the public safety is paramount. And sometimes it just takes dollars to make this happen.
Okay. Are there any technological needs that you would advocate for in the sheriff's department?
Well, you know, I like the body cams if they can be afforded.
Okay.
Why do you support them, and what issues have to be dealt with the implementation?
Well, I support them because when officers are go into a situation and there's a question of whether or not that the officer handled the job right, or if a citizens felt that they have been violated, you have your body cams, and I pray that the officer does not turn the body cam off, while doing the job, because that in itself sends up a flag that there's something wrong there. So yes, I do support that technology.
But do you foresee the expense being a problem
Well,
for getting them at the county?
Dealing with, when I was chief of police for the Illinois Commerce Commission, there's always questions about funding and the expenses to do the job. But unfortunately, in law enforcement, the county powers and the citizens, might have to understand that it takes money to operate a department of this size. Mm-hmm. And I would hope that they would rally behind the department to see that we have the proper funding just to keep public safety going.
Generally speaking, how do you feel the county jail is operating?
Right now, it appears to be operating okay. It would take for me to get inside the walls there to really do a proper assessment of what is going on. And a lot has to do with the morale of course, your employees. And so it would take, again, mind getting into there and, sitting at the table and talking to various peoples.
Okay. Recently, the longest serving county jail inmate ever was finally sentenced. He spent, I think, a little more than 6 years in the county jail. What type of reforms would you like to see be done to ensure inmates don't spend that long in jail?
Well, it would take working with the county circuit clerk's office, the state's attorney's office, assistant state's attorneys, and our people to make sure that the inmates that are here are dealt with as fast as possible to get them either finally charged and sent to a prison, or if it's a situation where they may be able to be put on parole or probation, but get them out of here as soon as possible, because it's a serious expense housing inmates for X number of years or months.
There's been talk recently about changing the bond procedures so that maybe people wouldn't have, if they couldn't pay the bond, they wouldn't necessarily have to go into jail. Any thoughts about that? Would you support that or no?
Well, unfortunately, some of the people that are incarcerated, some are legitimately indigent. Them or their families don't have the monies to put up to bond them out. So we would have to try to work on a situation where if we can get them to maybe go into a monitored work release program or something to keep our eyes on them and have them report back to us how they're doing, and we keep a constant check on them.
What's your sense of the staffing, especially officers, patrol officers out in the county? What's your sense of that, and would you see needed changes?
Well, given the fact that we have approximately 73 to 80 deputies that have to cover approximately 877 square miles, it's pretty spread out. I would like to see more deputies on the road to deal with those far out locations that they would have to travel. And also it's a officer safety issue as well as a citizen safety issue that we need a presence in some of the rural areas that we don't often get to as often as we can. And it's been a concern of a lot of the people in the outlying communities that they don't see enough patrol cars. And definitely your presence is a definite deterrent to crime. And if something major happened out, we need a good response team. If you had enough manpower, maybe we'll have somebody already close enough to get there and kind of monitor the situation until some more officers could come into the area or another community assist them. Officer safety and public safety is paramount.
At one point, probably 4 or 5 years ago, there was some talk of picking up surplus military equipment. It seems like they've kind of moved away from that now, but where would you stand on doing that kind of SWAT vehicles and some of those
I don't
kind
know
of
how
things?
extensive that they're talking about, what kind of total the equipment they're speaking of trying to purchase through surplus. But as Chief of Police for the Illinois Commerce Commission, I was able to get into that program, and we did purchase some things from surplus that helped us cut our budget. So yes, that's not a bad idea to use surplus.
So you'd look into that further to see
I would definitely look into it,
Okay.
yes.
There are efforts in the General Assembly to legalize recreational marijuana. A lot of law enforcement groups have come out against that. So talk to us about, do you support that effort, and why or why not?
I don't. I've never been for legalization of medical marijuana. I've never been it. I believe that it would be abused by some of the citizens and also some of the people that would be in charge of selling to the citizens. So it would have to, and again, that would take another issue of manpower for that to be sufficiently regulated to make sure that it is being dealt correctly.
I'm sorry, what problems do you see with the current medical marijuana program?
Well, I really don't know of any problems right now, totally, but I can see where down the road that could be, like any other deal that we have here in the States. You know, some people see an opportunity to take advantage of a situation, and it's all about monies. And that's been the driving force of a lot of the illegal stuff that occurs, and that's been the driving force why a good person might turn bad at the time.
So, but you think that might be happening now with the medical marijuana program?
I cannot respond to that because I haven't really had an opportunity to delve into it.
Nationwide, the relationship between police officers and the public is at times fraught with some tension. How would you work to strengthen the relationship between the Sheriff's Department and the public it serves?
Well, transparency, good police PR, public relations, taking time to go into the schools and talk to the kids when allowed. When you're out and cruising and there's not a lot of things that's happening, there's nothing wrong with just stopping for a moment, park your car, and maybe get engaged with a citizen to show them that you are there. You can go back to the old adage, officer friendly, to get to know the people that you're protecting and serving. It's major. We've seemed to have gone away from that. Everything has been so bang, bang, and with everything that's been going on throughout the nation with shootings and stuff between the citizens and police officers, we need to bring that back together where people trust that law enforcement is there to protect and serve. And that's their duty. And also that we're concerned about your situations, especially those situations involving school shootings. I think that's just ridiculous now that a child cannot go to school and feel safe. How can you concentrate on your studies? You know, and the parents have a responsibility too to know. When I was growing up, my parents knew who I hung around with. You know, we had guidelines at our house. At a certain time, you're in the house, bottom line. Certain time, you're doing your homework, bottom line. who was that you were running with today? I've never seen them. Parents have to ask these questions of their kids so they won't be surprised when something happened in a negative way.
You said good PR would be needed. Elaborate on that and what you mean, how that could be beneficial to this improving relationships.
People need to be feel like they're comfortable with law enforcement, and it takes some programs that are not really expensive. Invite people to encourage them to come to town hall meetings, listen to what is being said, express their concerns, and you know, it began to work, but the communication is not quite there still yet. And we need to go back to communicating with the public, let them know that, for instance, Sangamon County Sheriff Department is here for you and your protection. And I think people really want to feel safe. I've talked to several people in some of the counties, and then one little lady said that, you know, I sit at my window and I watch, you know, what's going on. And a lot of people don't do that any longer, but they see things that a lot of time law enforcement or you and I don't see. And they're not afraid to pick up the phone and make a call and report it.
If you were elected, how would you personally make yourself available to constituents?
I would have always had an open door policy. Even as chief of police for the Department of Corrections, Commerce Commission Police, my policy was open door. I got a lot of complaints about illegal trucking companies, illegal household good movers, those that did not have license or insurance to even run their company to safeguard the properties of those people that they were picking up furniture from. So I just made myself available when I got a complaint. Do you want me to come out and talk to you, ma'am? Sir, and I had no problem with that. And we enforce laws, commercial transportation laws throughout this whole state. Sometimes it took them to the most southern part of Illinois, to the most northern part of Illinois, but it was something that needed to be done. And I had no problem with doing it. And I would do the same here in Sangamon County. If I got a call and somebody wanted to talk to the sheriff, I know that will happen. People often do. And you may not be able to do it at that particular time, but you make sure that your second command or the people working for you call that person. This is his schedule. When will you be available to talk with him? He has no problem with coming out to where you are. You have to meet the people where they are out.
Okay. This is just a question we're asking to pretty much all the county candidates this time. The November ballot's a non-binding referendum that asks voters if they want the county to absorb Capital Township. There's plans by the city to put a similar measure on the spring ballot, but saying the city should absorb the township. So do you support consolidation of the township, and if so, with which entity?
I'm sorry, repeat that one more time, the last part.
Sure. Just do you support the consolidation of Capital Township with another governmental entity, and if so, with the county or the city?
I would support it.
With which one, the county or the city?
With the county.
Okay. With county, okay. Is there an issue you are passionate about addressing as county sheriff that we have not asked you about?
You pretty much ask everything.
I try to give that, if there's
Yes.
something that you very much want to talk about that we haven't asked about, I'm going to give you that opportunity.
But, my concern and my passion has always been safety of our children and the elderly. We get so many calls in reference to child abuse. Mm-hmm. The elderly being abused sometimes by their own family members. Those are my two major concerns. And officer safety is, of course, always.
Okay. Anything
Well-
else? Okay.
Well, we thank you for meeting with us today, and we invite you to give a brief closing statement as to why voters should elect you sheriff.
Well, real briefly, I have over 40 years law enforcement experience. throughout the state of Illinois. I've maintained a good track record wherever I went and served the people throughout the state of Illinois. I am knowledgeable in the law enforcement field. And the most valuable asset to me is that I have a legitimate concern about the welfare and the safety of all people in Sangamon County, not just a select few, but all. And I will work my darndest to make sure that Sangamon County is safe under my watch.